Very good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the current affairs classes. I hope the audio and video is all good. Can anyone please confirm? Tarun, PDF is uploaded in the current affairs course, paid course. PDFs are uploaded in the paid course section. Please confirm quickly, is the audio and video is all good? So today we are going to cover 2nd January 2025 current affairs, and of course at the end we are going to discuss the top 5 MCQs in the short series. Today we have really important news from the regulatory body news segment or the ESI segment. So a lot of news coming from SEBI. Alright, thank you, Sai. Lot of news and guidelines coming from RBI and SEBI. So stay tuned. It is a bit technical, but we will understand it anyway, right? So let's begin with the first section, ESI Finance and Business category. First news which we have in ESI is US banks, Citigroup and Bank of America. These two banks from US, Citigroup and Bank of America, they are exiting the Net Zero Bank Alliance. They are exiting the Net Zero Bank Alliance, okay, which is a group of global banks that have pledged to curb greenhouse gas emissions. So first of all, remember the name of these two banks who are exiting this Net Zero Banking Alliance. Which are the two banks? US based, Citigroup and the Bank of America. Citigroup and Bank of America. Now what is this Net Zero Banking Alliance? Net Zero Banking Alliance is an alliance of top banks across the world where they have committed that they will be financing such projects and they will be providing loans to such infrastructure projects and other related projects which are promoting sustainable development. So banks have also committed towards net zero emission target, that we will be financing, we will be providing loans for such kind of projects which are aiming at reducing the greenhouse gas emission across the world. Why these two banks have exited that? This is the news, right? Why these two banks have exited it. So Net Zero Banking Alliance is a group of leading global banks, as I told you, committed to align their lending, investment, capital market activities to net zero gas emission target by 2050. Remember this target? By 2050 they want to do it. Why they have exited? So this is a kind of new geopolitical dimension you see is emerging. They are pulling themselves away from such commitments. That shows some of the political pressures. So this news particularly is coming from the ongoing politics in US, right? We are not going to discuss the politics, that is not relevant, but the change in the government which is there in US, right? Government has changed, so polity has changed, basically politics has changed, their objectives have changed. So this is coming from political pressure that these banks, they have exited. Now you see, we need to highlight this thing that banking or financial institutions should be free from such political pressures. Otherwise, they will not be able to work prudently in the economy. This is only the news. So remember these things. I hope it is clear, right? And next, moving on to regulatory bodies news. So regulatory bodies news mein we have some important news. First is SEBI has introduced MF Lite framework for passive mutual funds. MF Lite framework is something which I have discussed with you in editorial sessions as well. MF Lite is basically a set of guidelines they have set for the passive mutual funds. You already know the difference between passive and active mutual fund. What are passive funds? Passive funds, they generally track the benchmark indices, right? So they track the performance of the benchmark indices. They do not try to outperform them. We have discussed this thing, unlike the actual ones, right? So passive funds, they track a benchmark index and they try to mimic its performance. So this is quite predictable and less, risky, because it is just trying to mimic, is not trying to outperform it. So although that might be resulting into lesser gains, but it is quite stable as compared to the active mutual fund. I hope it is clear, right? This is the thing. So this is the framework for passive mutual fund, MF Lite framework. SEBI has introduced this thing to promote ease of entry, encourage new players, reduce compliance requirements, increase the penetration of passive funds in the economy, facilitate investment diversification and all. This was the objective of MF Light framework. Now, what is the news? That the MF Light framework has allowed launch of passive funds with 5,000 crores of AUM. This is the catch from here. It says that you can launch such funds with AUM, the asset under management of 5,000 crores, right? So the framework applies to passive funds based on domestic equity indices. This MF Light framework, first of all, I hope you have understood the difference between active and passive fund. Second thing, this framework will be applying on whom? It will be applying on domestic equity indices. What are domestic equity indices? These are nothing like your NSE and BSE, right? So like you have Nifty 50, Nifty 50, etc., which track the performance of the top 50 companies. So these are domestic equity indices that represent the performance of publicly traded companies within a specific country, like you have Nifty, etc., right? So this is the thing. Now this framework says that the MF Light framework is going to apply with minimum assets under management of rupees 5,000 crore or more on domestic equity indices for passive funds based on such domestic equity indices. This is the news. So you have to remember this 5,000 crore. What does this mean? This entire thing means that such passive funds based on such indices like Nifty 50, etc., they should have minimum AUM, asset under management, of 5,000 crore or more. So minimum is 5,000, can be more than 5,000 crores. Remember this amount. Now what is AUM? AUM is asset under management. It is the total value of the assets managed by these mutual funds. Okay. Are you getting my point? Say for example, whatever you have invested, the outstanding mutual funds or their value. So number into value, number into price. Like we calculate the AUM, outstanding number of shares, and then their price, like this only. So AUM basically gives you how much they are performing. It gives you it is an indicator of their performance basically. It gives you an idea of their performance, and this is asset under management, the total value of their assets which they are holding as an investment company or as a mutual fund. Okay, this is the thing. Now AUM should be 5,000 or more. Who are the eligible, or which are the eligible instruments here? So eligible instruments which can be a part of this new framework are G-Secs, T-bills. So these mutual funds, they can invest in these securities under this framework, right? What are these securities? Your government securities, T-bills, SDL. SDL are state development loans. So you know, state government cannot issue these T-bills or G-Sec. State government, to raise fund, issues government bonds. These are known as SDL, state development loans. Okay, state development loans, the government bonds issued by the state government. SDL, based on domestic target maturity. Then gold and silver ETF. So G-Sec, T-bills are eligible under this framework. Next eligible category is gold and silver ETF. What is ETF? Exchange traded fund. So you know, generally mutual funds, they are not traded, but the funds which are traded on the exchanges, these are exchange traded funds. ETF. ETF, you have ETF for gold, right, where the underlying value of the asset is derived from gold, from silver. So those gold and silver based ETFs which are traded on the exchange, funds which are traded on the exchanges, the ETFs, they are also eligible. Then you have funds of funds. Funds of funds are also eligible under this framework to bring passive funds minimum 5,000 crore or more of AUM. Funds of funds are what? Funds of funds are basically mutual fund of the mutual fund, or fund of the mutual fund. For example, if I am a mutual fund, I am not investing directly into the security, but I am investing into a mutual fund. So like RBI is banker to the banks, so fund of funds is a fund to the mutual fund itself. It does not directly invest it. Okay, this is the thing. Then overseas ETFs are also eligible, and fund of funds, overseas one. Apart from the domestically located, overseas ETFs are also eligible. Then funds investing exclusively in single domestic overseas index. If any fund investing in overseas index, it is also eligible. So overseas one have also been incorporated. I hope these guidelines are clear as of now. Tell me yes or no. Whatever we have discussed quickly. Anyone? You have understood whatever we have discussed, right? Tell me anyone, yes or no, so that I can proceed further. Okay, so I'm assuming that you have understood this. All right. So let's discuss ahead. Remember 5,000 crore wala figure, and then who has suggested this? This has been suggested by Association of Mutual Funds in India, AMFI, in consultation with SEBI. So they will be prescribing the list of such eligible domestic equity indices on a periodic basis. They will be revising such list as to who will be eligible for such passive fund investments, right? Key provisions for overseas passive schemes. As we have discussed recently that the overseas investment or overseas funds are also eligible. If you are investing in overseas funds, it will also be eligible for MF-lite framework. So what are the guidelines particularly for overseas? You need to remember them. First thing, that such indices for overseas passive scheme, they will be standardized and broad based in nature. What does this point means? It means the first point. It means that all such investments, they will be standardized. If you are investing overseas, right? If you are investing in funds or indices overseas, that would be standardized. Standardized means benchmarks, options of investment, nature, category of investment you are offering as a mutual fund, all these things will be standardized. There will be no discrepancy, right? There should be uniformity kind of thing. So this is the first point. Second point, overseas ETF or index funds, they have to comply with the diversification requirement. Such ETFs, fund of funds, mutual fund which are based overseas, if you want to come under MF-lite framework, you need to comply with this diversification requirement. Remember this specifically. What is this diversification requirement? It says that you should have at least 10 securities in your portfolio if you want investment to come into it, right? Under MF-lite framework, if you want to be eligible, you should have 10 securities. So if anyone wants to invest overseas, that portfolio should have minimum how many number of securities? 10 securities in the portfolio. Remember this figure, 10 securities in an equity index portfolio. This is the next point. Next point which we have is that such passive funds, they who are based only overseas, whose quantitative threshold or AUM, asset under management, exceeds a minimum of $20 billion will be covered under phase 1 of implementation of MF-lite. So such passive funds first will be provided priority, those who have their AUM, again AUM, asset under management, the total value of the assets they are holding or managing, if the value exceeds, it is minimum $20 billion or it exceeds $20 billion, they will be first, they will be a part of the first phase of implementation of this. So remember all these things, 5,000 crore minimum AUM, then we have discussed 10 number of securities at least should be there in their portfolio if as a passive fund you are investing in overseas indices or funds, right? And second thing is $20 billion से जितना मिनिमम $20 बिलियन AUM अगर आपका है या उससे ज्यादा है, then you will be first phase, you will be in a part of the first phase of the implementation. Governance and standards की बात करें अगर हम, so the combined experience of CEO, COO, Chief Compliance Officer, Chief Investment Officer of the entity should be at least 20 years. Okay. So for such passive funds, which we are talking, on which MF-lite framework is imposed, such passive funds, all these, position holders, CEO, COO, their experience is also specified. They should have minimum 20 years of experience. ऐसा नहीं कि कोई fresher या startup किसी ने चालू किया, you are entering into the market suddenly. So 20 years of experience. Then SEBI has allowed the PE firms, the private equity firms who manage these investments, right, to be the sponsor of entities. They can be your sponsor. they can sponsor you. Okay, and capital and lock-in period, if you see capital and lock-in requirements, one more important thing, to safeguard the entities and to ensure transparency, SEBI has specified that there will be no off-market transaction between the schemes of MF Lite and the sponsor PE. जो भी होगा market based transaction होगा, no other off market transaction should be there among you. Okay, then capital and lock-in requirement. So an initial shareholding of a sponsor equivalent to capital contributed to an AMC not less than 75 crore will be locked in for 3 years. Okay, so remember, if you are investing in an asset management company who is managing these passive funds, where the initial shareholding of the sponsor is not less than 75 crores, so that investment will be locked in for 3 years. Okay, yes, senior management level का we are talking about कि 20 years का at least experience होना चाहिए, है ना, 20 years का experience होना चाहिए. And यहाँ पर आपको ध्यान रखना है कि if you are investing in the funds offered by the instruments offered by such asset management company जिसका initial shareholding is not less than 75 crore, then your such investment will have a lock-in period of at least 3 years. Okay, 3 years के लिए lock किया जाएगा that investment. For AMCs who have their initial shareholding of not less than 75 crores, remember this. So these were some important features of this MF Lite framework. I hope you have understood, everyone, right? Whatever important figures were there, I have highlighted. Remember them, and conceptual clarity should always be there. That's why we have discussed the concepts as well. If you have any doubt, still you can ask me. So moving on to the next news. Then again, we have LODR in news. LODR pe I have taken a separate class on the YouTube. Recent LODR draft regulations were there. So SEBI has mandated integrated filing for LODR effective from, ending of the December 2024 only. What is LODR? LODR stands for listing obligations and disclosure requirements. LODR is basically a set of guidelines by SEBI which requires your listed, publicly traded and listed companies which are listed on your stock exchanges to disclose. So these guidelines, they govern how they are going to disclose their information. So disclosure and listing obligations. What are the obligations they should be complying with to list themselves on the stock exchanges, and how should they be disclosing the documents and the information, right? These are the guidelines. So basically it governs the governance part of them. Okay, this is the thing. Now what is the news? News is SEBI has introduced integrated LODR. What is this integration? It says to make the compliance easier with the governance standards, now you will not have to disclose number of information, number of documents. Okay, it will be categorized into 2 heads. Remember, governance and financial. So to make the compliance easier and simplify the disclosure requirement, they are trying to integrate their periodic filing under 2 categories. Whatever periodic filing, जो भी आपको time to time file करनी होती है information, now these periodic filing will be in 2 categories. Governance category and then financial category. Remember these 2 categories, governance category and financial category. उसके अलावा कुछ भी करने की जरूरत नहीं है, right? So governance category will be, in governance category you will be disclosing reports on your corporate governance, okay, investor grievances, redress updates, how you have addressed the investors grievances, what is your status on corporate governance, etc. Okay, it has to be filed, remember, within 30 days of the quarter's end. Whenever a quarter ends, within 30 days of that end of the quarter, you have to file this governance related disclosure. Remember this 30-day figure. I hope you are catching it, right? 30 days. This is important. They can ask you the number of days even directly, right? So 30 days, by the end of the quarter, you have to file the governance related disclosure. Next one is your financial disclosure. financial disclosure. So within 45 days, within 45 days of your quarter's end, whenever your quarter ends, within 45 days of it, you need to file financial disclosure, which will be telling SEBI about your transactions, outstanding loan defaults if they are, what are your quarterly financial status, okay, results. So these have to be submitted. So this is a report on your financial transactions and performance, and governance one is on your corporate governance based performance. Governance wala within 30 days of quarters end, and finance wala within 45 days of quarters and you have to file. And for the financial year end disclosures, 60-day window will be provided. When the financial year ends, then you have to file entire disclosure of the, you have to disclose all the performances, governance and finance based for the entire financial year, for which 60 days period would be provided. 60 days period would be provided. Remember this thing. I hope these LODR regulations are clear to you, right? This is how we are calling that it has integrated the LODR obligations into two broad categories. Next, RBI, sorry. RBI tightens liquidity norms for deposit taking HFCs. What is this? Let's see. So RBI basically has implemented some revised norms. Revised norms for whom? For the deposit taking housing finance companies. What are housing finance companies? These are particularly kind of NBFCs. Non-banking financial companies generally you see are non-deposit taking in nature, right? But specifically certain deposit taking NBFCs are also there. So the deposit taking one, which accept deposit as well. Generally the difference if you see between a bank and a non-banking financial companies, they do not accept the demand deposit. This is the basic difference, right? Term deposits they can accept. So when we are talking about deposit taking housing finance companies, remember it is not the demand deposit जो आप withdraw कर लेते हैं demand पे. No, they can be term deposits. This is what NBFCs can accept. So such housing finance companies, those who are providing finance to the housing sector and industry, उनके लिए RBI has revised certain norms. Okay. So what is the revision? Now RBI requires them to maintain higher levels of liquid assets against their deposits. Whatever term deposits you have accepted, against them, in proportion of them, you should maintain high level of liquidity. So RBI wants such NBFCs or HFCs to maintain higher liquidity. This is the news. Okay. And this is going to be effective from 1st January only. So it has started. It has implemented. What is the guideline? Guideline says that such companies must hold liquid assets equivalent to 14% of their outstanding deposits. Whatever you have, any form of deposits, whatever deposits you have accepted, what are outstanding deposits here? Outstanding deposits here means which are lying with you. So the customer has not withdrawn it yet. Okay. Outstanding deposit here is whatever deposits are still with you, the customer has not withdrawn it. Out of that total outstanding deposit, at least 14% you should maintain in liquid assets. At least 14% you should maintain in liquid assets, which are easily convertible into cash. Okay. 14%, remember this. Which should include 8% in your unencumbered approved securities like GSEC, SDL, T-bill, which is calculated as a percentage of public deposit. 14% में से 14% में से 8% should be in the form of unencumbered approved securities. Securities तो आप लोगों को पता है what are securities, but then what are unencumbered securities? Unencumbered securities are which are not used as collateral against something. तो जो आपने किसी भी फॉर्म में कोलेट्रल की तरह प्लेस किया हुआ है उसकी बात नहीं कर रहे हैं हम. यहाँ पर हम बात कर रहे हैं वट एवर सिक्योरिटीज यू हैव लाइक GSEC, T-bill, SDL, स्टेट डेवलपमेंट लोन्स, which you have not provided a security against any loan. So 8% should be such unencumbered approved securities. Okay. Out of that 14%. So out of this 8% should be in this form. Also RBI has mandated that the total liquid assets requirement, it will increase to 15%, in which 10% should be this. Okay. By 1st July 2025. So RBI has said, अभी हम कह रहे हैं 14% of your outstanding deposit you need to maintain in liquid assets, 8% in unencumbered government securities. By 1st July 2025, gradually we are going to increase this. 14% will become 15% and this 8% will become 10%. I hope it is clear, the entire news, everyone tell me. So what was the criteria before this? Earlier they had to maintain only 13% of their public deposit as liquid asset. So now it has been raised to 14% and they will again be raising it to 15%. These are very, very important. So these are circulars only, right? I hope you have understood this thing, everyone. And remember the concepts as well, which we are discussing in the class. So this was it from RBI. Next news we have is growth in the non-food credit of scheduled commercial banks has slowed down to 11.8% in November 2024. First of all, what are scheduled commercial banks? Anyone? So scheduled banks are those banks which are mentioned in the Schedule 2. Schedule 2 of RBI Act 1934, right? So for these banks, the loan given to non-food sector, non-food credit, it has witnessed a slow growth. It has slowed down to 11.8% in November 2024. Now the figure is not so much important here because this is monthly figure. It will keep on changing. So quarterly figures and more length when is provided for the time, like 10 years, 5 years or few months. So that data becomes more important. 11.8% it has slowed down. But the point is why? And which are these non-food credit sectors? Non-food credit sector, any sector where you are not taking loan for food procurement, like apart from agriculture, right? So manufacturing ho gaya, services sector, any other thing apart from food procurement. This has declined. The credit has declined. So this is the thing. Nothing more is relevant here. You just need to remember this trend particularly. And one more important fact which we can discuss from here, that within this entire industry, loans to micro and small segments saw moderation. Okay, so they did not dip very sharply. Loans given to the micro and small segment, they have been on a moderate growth trajectory. They have not witnessed a sharp decline. That is quite significant. So this is only relevant. Then next news is RBI, Reserve Bank of India, has announced interest rate for RBI floating rate saving bonds. Okay, for January to June 2025. Now these new floating rate saving bonds are out and this is going to be important. So very important news, let's discuss this. RBI has announced interest rate for the RBI floating rate saving bonds. Now, you know what are bonds? Bonds are long-term securities, right? Generally more than 1 year ka maturity period is there on bonds. Now, when we are talking about floating rate bonds, so you see broadly two kind of rates you get. One is fixed, which does not change, right? So fixed coupon it will offer you. Another one is floating rate. Floating rate is something where the interest is not fixed. It keeps on changing. So it will be adjusted periodically. Okay. It will be adjusted periodically. These are floating rate bonds. What is the interest the RBI has announced? So RBI has announced that the floating rate saving bond, which will be taxable, that means the interest earned on this will be taxable. So remember, this is a probable area of question. Is the interest earned on such bond will it be taxable? Yes, it will be taxable. Okay, it is going to offer 8.05% of the interest rate from January to June 2025. What is the interest rate? Remember this figure, noted down separately. It can be important for the recent examinations, right? 8.05. Remember this thing. 8.05 is the interest rate from January to June. Now, very important thing is the interest rate of the RBI floating rate saving bond. It is linked to the interest rate of the NSC, National Savings Certificate. National Saving Certificate is a small saving scheme, you know, right? And you will be telling me, recently in the current affairs we have discussed that the interest rate on all these small saving schemes have been kept unchanged by the ministry. So tell me, what is the present interest being offered on NSC? Anyone? I would be waiting. Tell me in the comment section. NSC पे कितना rate चल रहा है अभी, right? So remember this RBI floating rate saving bond में it will be, the interest rate will be 0.35% higher than what NSC offers. So you have to remember this. This will be NSC का interest rate plus 0.35%. NSC plus 0.35%. So now you can calculate and tell me what is the rate being offered on NSC. So remember, NSC plus 0.35% it would be. These two figures are very, very important. Remember them, right? This is the thing. What will the period? So the lock-in period is for 7 years. Okay. Lock-in period will be for 7 years. 7 years ke liye you have to put in the money. All right. Okay, 7.7. All right. So lock-in period will be 7 years, remember. Then what are the other typical features? There will be no premature withdrawal option, but senior citizens can get the option to withdraw prematurely. 7 साल से पहले you cannot withdraw the money. Okay, 7 years. No premature withdrawal, but for senior citizens it will be there. If you are a senior citizen, you can prematurely withdraw it. 60 to 70 की एज में अगर आप हैं तो in 6 years you can withdraw. 70 to 80 में in 5 years you can withdraw, and if you are above 80 within 4 years you can withdraw. Remember these important features. This is, you know, something you can expect a direct question from. All right, I hope it is clear, everyone. So let's move ahead with the next news. Now it is over, the regulatory bodies news. I know it was a bit heavy today, but we need to remember these things, right? Now let's move to the banking news quickly. So in banking news, we have the NPCI extending the deadline for implementing 30% volume cap on third-party UPI apps by another 2 years in December 31, 2026. So basically NPCI wants to do what? Wants to provide fair competition. UPI पे जो third party app है, like your Paytm, Google Pay, Phone Pay, right? Google Pay, Phone Pay, they use UPI for their transactions, है ना? But what is the trend which they are observing? That these apps like Google Pay and Phone Pay, they hold 80% of the share in UPI transactions. They hold 80% of their share in the UPI transaction. So where is the competition? Fair competition. You are sweeping out the market, right? So NPCI wants to do what? It wants to implement this thing कि 30% cap कर देंगे. किसी भी third party का more than 30% should not be there on the volume of transactions on UPI. So this is important. Remember, this is proposed. It is not implemented yet. So this deadline again for the implementation has been extended. Implementation deadline has been extended for 2 years, right? So remember, 30% volume cap they are proposing. This much only is relevant here. 30% cap on what? Whatever volume of transactions are happening via UPI. आपका एक third party app का 30% से ज़्यादा नहीं हो सकता. This is to ensure that everyone gets fair opportunity. Right? Remember this thing. Next news we have is RBI has lifted restrictions on Sangli Sehkari Bank, which had been in place for 2 years. So due to some financial performance and liquidity issues, there were certain restrictions imposed on Sangli Sehkari Bank, which is Cooperative Bank. But now these restrictions, they have been lifted. Okay. So just remember this name, nothing else to be discussed here. Then next what we have is RBI has received an application from VFS Capital Limited. VFS Capital Limited under the on-tap licensing guidelines for small finance banks in the private sector. So what is VFS Capital? VFS Capital is basically NBFC, non-banking financial company, which is working in microfinance sector and based in West Bengal, Kolkata. Now VFS Capital has applied for on-tap licensing in a small finance bank, okay, under a small finance bank. So it wants to work as a small finance bank. Now very important segment it is. Small finance bank आपका circular का भी बहुत important topic है. So static और current affairs दोनों यहाँ पर important हो जाता है. You must read this carefully. First of all, so VFS Capital is clear. Then the question is, what is on-tap licensing guidelines? On-tap licensing क्या होती है? On-tap licensing is sometimes there are guidelines कि we will only accept applications at a particular point of time. नहीं जैसे schools में होता है कि इसी time admission open होंगे, right? But then on-tap licensing is that we are open to provide licenses at any point of time in the year. So this is not fixed to a particular window. This is on-tap licensing, okay? Now what are the guidelines for small finance banks? So you must know that to become a small finance bank or to work as a small finance bank, what are the guidelines, what you should be following? First thing, you should be registered. If you want to work as SFB, small finance bank, you should be registered as a public limited company under Companies Act 2013. First thing. Second thing, you should have license under Section 22 of Banking Regulation Act 1949. Third thing, minimum paid up capital or net worth for you should be rupees 200 crore except urban cooperative banks. Okay, remember this amount, 200 crores. Minimum paid up capital if you want to work as SFB should be rupees 200 crores. Okay. And if you are transiting to SFB as urban cooperative bank, so if you are an urban cooperative bank and then you want to work as a small finance bank, then the initial capital requirement on net worth is rupees 100 crore, okay, which then later on will be increased to 200 crore within 5 years. So remember, अगर आप अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक नहीं है और आप स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक की तरह काम करना चाहते हैं तो मिनिमम कैपिटल रिक्वायरमेंट वुड बी पेड अप कैपिटल और नेटवर्थ वुड बी 200 करोड़. इफ यू आर एन अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक, existing urban cooperative bank, and then you want to convert into small finance bank, तो जो आपका minimum paid up capital requirement या net worth होगा 100 करोड़. But this 100 crore you have to raise to 200 crore within 5 years. So 5 साल दिए जाएंगे आपको 100 करोड़ और उसमें add करने के लिए. This is the thing. Remember, what are the priority sector lending norms? So PSL norms, if we discuss for this, PSL norms, what are PSL? Priority sector lending, you must be knowing that these are the guidelines which set out that how much you should be lending out of your total credit extension to certain priority sectors. What are these priority sectors which the government wants to develop? Like you have MSME is one of the priority sectors, healthcare, education, right? So these priority sectors for development, you need to lend to them so that they do not fall beyond their credit requirement. So PSL requirement for SFB is you need to extend 75% of your net bank credit, adjusted net bank credit to the priority sectors. Okay. Remember this, how much? 75%. Out of your net credit, whatever net credit you have extended, जितना आपकी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स उसमें से हटा देंगे. सो व्हाट इज नेट हियर? नेट हियर इज जितना आपने इन्वेस्ट किया है उसको माइनस करें, जो भी आपने लोन देना है नेट क्रेडिट उसका 75%, एडजस्टेड नेट बैंक क्रेडिट 75% you have to give to PSL, priority sector lending, if you are working as SFB. Okay, then capital adequacy, very very important. सीधा क्वेश्चन, कैपिटल एडिक्वेसी रेशियो क्या है? हाउ मच capital you should have against your risky assets like loans etc, right? So this is capital adequacy requirement. SFB's ka capital adequacy ratio is at least 15%. So at least 15% of your total risk weighted assets should be there in with you, right, to maintain capital adequacy. At least 15%. So remember this 15%. Next one is branch network. at least 25% of your branches should be located in unbanked rural areas. ऐसा नहीं हो कि आप सिर्फ अर्बन एरियाज में या ही लोकेटेड हो, आपकी टोटल ब्रांचेस का एटलीस्ट 25% शुड बी इन दोज एरियाज वेयर द बैंकिंग पेनिट्रेशन इज वेरी लो, इन अनबैंक्ड रूरल एरियाज. ओके, so remember this thing. I hope this is clear. The guidelines towards a small finance bank, if you want to, so all things we have discussed, entire circular I hope is revised in this news, right? So remember 15% CRAR net worth requirement, 75% PSL requirement, 25% branches you should have in unbanked areas, etc. Then this is something extra, that if you want to convert, if a small finance bank wants to convert to universal bank, what are the requirements? What is universal bank or what is universal banking? Universal banking basically means where you are providing wide range of services apart from core banking services. कोर बैंकिंग क्या होती है? डिपॉजिट लेना और लोन देना, राइट? यूनिवर्सल बैंकिंग में यू आर ऑल्सो प्रोवाइडिंग इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग सर्विसेज, यू आर ऑफरिंग लॉट ऑफ फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज, राइट? म्यूचुअल फंड भी मैनेज करो, बहुत सारी चीजें यू आर मैनेजिंग, दैट इज यूनिवर्सल बैंकिंग. सो इफ स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक वांट्स टू ट्रांजिट टू अ यूनिवर्सल बैंक, व्हाट आर द रिक्वायरमेंट्स? इन दैट केस अ स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक मस्ट हैव अ मिनिमम नेटवर्थ ऑफ ₹1000 crores. Remember, then the small finance bank must be scheduled bank, okay, for a good performance for past 5 years. And then financial health की अगर हम बात करें तो उसका net profit in the last 2 financial years होना चाहिए, यानी net profit होना चाहिए last 2 financial years में. Asset quality, GNPA and net NPA must be less than or equal to 3% and 1% respectively for the last 2 financial years. In that case, the GNPA is gross non-performing asset, NNPA is net non-performing asset, should be 3% and 1% respectively of your over the last 2 financial years. पिछले 2 साल में आपका GNPA, GNPA 3%, NNPA 1% होना चाहिए if you want to work as universal bank and you are SFB. What is GNPA, NPA? You all know that. GNPA और NNPA में क्या डिफरेंस है? GNPA में हम प्रोविजन को भी इंक्लूड करके रखते हैं, राइट? सो रिस्की लोन्स के अगेंस्ट में जो हम प्रोविजन रखते हैं कि इन केस द लोन डिफॉल्ट्स वी विल बी एबल टू रिकवर इट फ्रॉम द प्रोविजंस, वी मेंटेन सम फंड, राइट, एज प्रोविजन. व्हेन वी डिडक्ट दैट फंड, सो इट गिव्स यू एक्चुअल रिस्क कि आप कितने रिस्क में हो, राइट? बिकॉज देन you only have the loan which is riskier, the value of the NPA. You have deducted provision against it in NNPA. So when you deduct the value of provision from GNPA, it gives you NNPA. That's why NNPA requirement is more less, कि 1% तक ही होना चाहिए, क्योंकि this is more real indicator of risk associated. So remember these things. I hope it is clear. The SFB guidelines. Next thing which we have is National Payment Corporation of India. So NPCI has lifted the user limit for WhatsApp Pay effective immediately. You know, NPCI had allowed WhatsApp to expand its UPI user base in phases with a cap of 100 million users. तो initially WhatsApp Pay का जो feature है, आप लोगों ने देखा होगा, right? WhatsApp Pay का feature पे there was a limit कि initially you can only extend it to 100 million users. How many? 100 million users. But now NPCI says that WhatsApp Pay can be offered, or WhatsApp Pay can now offer UPI services to entire user base in India. Okay, so now it is not limited, you can offer it to n number of people. This is the news. Since UPI is in news, so some additional information regarding UPI is also important, like, so this is fund transfer limit by UPI. What is the fund transfer limit which you can do on UPI? So standard transactions के लिए up to 1 lakh per transaction you can do UPI, right? Capital market, insurance, in सब में if you want to transact, then up to 2 lakh you can do. IPO and retail direct scheme if you want to use UPI, so you can transfer up to ₹5 lakh. These are the fund transfer limits on UPI. You should be remembering this. Then the next one is key urban cooperative banks stakeholders, the UCB stakeholders, including Union Ministry of Cooperation and National Federation of Urban Cooperative Banks and Credit Societies. They are racing against time to ensure that the umbrella organization for UCBs, okay, which are required to have 300 crore capital by the RBI Feb 7 2025 deadline, has this much capital. So they are trying to meet 300 crore rupees of capital target as per the RBI deadline, which is 7th Feb 2025. 7th Feb 2025. What is this umbrella organization? This is again very important. See, what is this umbrella organization? So, following recommendation of an expert committee, which was led by, remember this name, N.S. Vishwanathan, okay? This is not M.S. Vishwanathan, okay? This is N.S. Vishwanathan. So, following recommendation of this committee headed by N.S. Vishwanathan, NAFCUB, NAFCUB received in principle approval from RBI to establish an umbrella organization which wants to strengthen the urban cooperative bank sector. What is the name of this umbrella organization? The name is National Urban Cooperative Finance and Development Corporation. So the name is NUCFDC. Remember this thing. NUCFDC. This is what you need to remember, the full form as well. What is NUCFDC? National Urban Cooperative Finance and Development Corporation. This is an umbrella organization which will be working for betterment, development, financing, etc. Lot of work will be done. So it will be implementing the UCB guidelines. What is SRO? SRO is self-regulatory organizations. What do SROs do? SROs basically implement the guidelines in their industry, right? So they will be implementing it and they will be ensuring that the UCB sector grows further. This is an umbrella organization for all the urban cooperative banks. Remember the name. NUCFDC, okay? If you meet this capital requirement, if you want to work as SRO, this NUCFDC wants to work as SRO, you need to maintain capital. What is the capital? 300 crores. Remember, what is the capital? 300 crores. Then you will be able to work as this SRO, and SRO ka kya role hota hai? I have already explained, right? So remember, 300 crore capital will be required. Just give me a second. All right, let's resume our discussion then. So this is the thing. I hope it is clear regarding that umbrella organization. Next news which we have is State-Owned Power Grid Corporation of India, the PGCI. It has signed a green loan pact with Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation from Japan. Okay. Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation from Japan. What is this? This agreement has been signed to develop critical infrastructure for renewable energy. After this, they will be working towards renewable energy. So they want to develop, with this agreement, they want to develop infrastructure for renewable energy. Next, the Reserve Bank of India has implemented new rules for fixed deposits with the NBFCs and housing finance companies starting from 1st January 2025. So whatever fixed deposits, like I told you, the difference between a bank and NBFC is what? बैंक और NBFC में क्या डिफरेंस है? बैंक और NBFC में ये डिफरेंस है कि बैंक कैन ऑल्सो एक्सेप्ट डिमांड डिपॉजिट एंड टर्म डिपॉजिट, बट NBFCs दे कैन ओनली एक्सेप्ट टर्म डिपॉजिट. तो फिक्स डिपॉजिट एक टर्म डिपॉजिट होता है जो एक फिक्स टर्म के लिए होता है, राइट? So RBI has implemented some new rules. New rules for what? For fixed deposits held with the NBFCs and housing finance companies. इनके साथ जो भी आपके एफडी है, फिक्स डिपॉजिट है, उसके कुछ न्यू रूल्स हैं जो इंप्लीमेंट हो चुके हैं फ्रॉम 1 जनवरी. व्हाट आर दीज? लेट्स सी दिस टेबल. फर्स्ट थिंग, इफ इट इज अ स्मॉल डिपॉजिट, if that fixed deposit is a small deposit. Small deposit क्या है? If it is up to rupees 10,000, okay, then you are allowed to withdraw it within 3 months of opening the deposit account. If you have a small deposit as fixed deposit with NBFCs or any housing finance company, then you are allowed to withdraw the money within 3 months of opening the deposit. राइट 10,000 से कम होगा तो स्मॉल डिपॉजिट. देन इंटरेस्ट नो, उस विड्रॉल पे कोई भी इंटरेस्ट चार्ज नहीं किया जाएगा. राइट, सो इफ यू विड्रॉ इट विद इन 3 months of the opening of the deposit, no interest will be charged. Second, partial withdrawal for larger deposits. Now what are these larger deposits? Larger deposits will be deposits exceeding 10,000 rupees. Deposits exceeding 10,000 rupees, partial withdrawals will be allowed. What does that mean? Within 3 months you can withdraw, but only up to 50% of the principal amount or rupees 5 lakh, whichever is lower. या तो जो भी आपका प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट है उसका 50% you can withdraw within 3 months, or up to rupees 5 lakh, whichever is lower. For larger deposits 10,000 से ज़्यादा, इस पे भी no interest will be there on the withdrawal. Okay, and then critical illness के केस में critical illness clause says if depositor is diagnosed with a critical illness, if you are not normal, your health is not normal, and you are diagnosed with a critical illness, with a serious illness, in that case you can withdraw the entire principal amount prematurely regardless of the deposit term. तब आपको 3 महीना भी नहीं देखना है. You can withdraw it prematurely if you are critically ill, right? And again in that case no interest would be charged. Also to improve transparency by requiring NBFCs and HFCs to notify depositors about upcoming maturity at least 14 days in advance. This is again important, very important. Remember, ऐसी NBFCs और HFCs को जो भी मेच्योरिटी आ रही है, जैसे आपकी फिक्स डिपॉजिट की मेच्योरिटी कब है उसके बारे में 14 डेज. अब ट्रांसपेरेंसी की क्या बात है, आप लोगों ने सुना होगा, दिस इशू इज देयर इन बैंकिंग सेक्टर, कि जब एफडी मैच्योर हो जाती है दैट अमाउंट दे रोटेट समवेयर एल्स, राइट, किसी और के नाम कर देंगे. बहुत सारी डिस्क्रिपेंसीज आर देयर. नाउ टू एंश्योर ट्रांसपेरेंसी एंड रिडक्शन इन दीज माल प्रैक्टिसेस, आपको 14 डेज बिफोर द मेच्योरिटी ऑफ दीज एफडीज एटसेट्रा यू नीड टू इन्फॉर्म द पब्लिक, द डिपॉजिटर. सो रिमेंबर 14 डेज. पहले ये 2 महीने था दैट यू नीड टू प्रोवाइड द नोटिस 2 months बिफोर द मेच्योरिटी डेट, बट नाउ बिफोर 14 डेज, ताकि याद रहे ना कि मेच्योर हो रहा है मेरा फिक्स डिपॉजिट जो है, राइट, सो दैट आई कैन एक्ट अकॉर्डिंगली. रिमेंबर दिस. आई होप दिस इज क्लियर एवरीवन. lot of heavy things are today there in the discussion, I know, but you need to remember, okay, and the concept as well. One very important thing, other thing which I need to discuss with you, why do you think these are changing? ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? हम क्यों FD को और better option बना रहे हैं? These kind of the questions are there which they ask you in the interview, right? So you need to open up your minds, you need to think about it. This is the factual situation, we have discussed it. Okay, interest नहीं लगेगा, इतने में आप withdraw कर सकते हो, इतना limit होगा, 3 महीने में withdraw कर सकते हो, that's okay. But then why they are providing you these opportunities? So the reason is current trend. You should be aware about what is going in the economy. The trend is there's a divergence. So there was a divergence, huge divergence between credit growth and deposit growth. डिपॉजिट ग्रोथ कम थी, डिपॉजिट कम आ रहे थे बैंकिंग सेक्टर में, और क्रेडिट ग्रोथ फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर में और क्रेडिट ग्रोथ ज़्यादा थी. नाउ टू रिड्यूस दिस डाइवर्जेंस, बिकॉज अदरवाइज इफ योर deposit growth is less and your credit growth is anyway higher, so in future you are going to face a liquidity crisis. कहाँ से अपना क्रेडिट फंड करोगे, राइट? लिक्विडिटी क्राइसिस होगी. To ensure that the financial sector or the banking system in India, these institutes, they have enough liquidity. Now when you provide incentives on these kind of deposits, FD and all, people will be depositing their money, So money will flow to the institutes, liquidity will enhance. So we will be able to bridge this gap between this divergence between the credit growth and the deposit growth which is there. So I hope you have understood the reason as well, right? So this is the thing. You should be knowing all these trends for your interview preparation. This was banking, regulatory, ESI. Then moving to national news. Now, national news mein you have Air India. Air India has rolled out Wi-Fi internet connectivity services on board. Okay. For domestic as well as international flights operated by Airbus 350, Boeing 787 and select other Airbuses. So Air India has provided you Wi-Fi internet connectivity on flight, on board. Now this makes the Tata-owned airline first one to offer in-flight Wi-Fi connectivity on flights within India. Okay. In-flight Wi-Fi connectivity provide करने वाला, it is the first Tata-owned airline. Now here you have two different facts. First such airline to offer Wi-Fi services is Vistara. Vistara Airlines. Vistara is the first one to offer such services, right? The Air India is Tata-owned first one to offer this. I hope you understood the difference between the two. Right? But then Vistara was merged into Air India, you all know that. So now Tata owned Air India is only the one. Vistara was merged into Air India. यहाँ पे you can also remember this thing that in aviation what happens is that aircraft at a minimum height of 3000 meters in India should provide operation of mobile communication services, okay, to avoid interference with the terrestrial mobile networks. So 3000 meter at least जब हो तब जाके you can provide the mobile internet services. तब आपने देखा होगा एयरप्लेन मोड पे फोन आपका होता है in flight when you are on board the flight, right? So 3000 meters पे you can provide, otherwise जो terrestrial network है वो disturb होता है उससे. But Wi-Fi के लिए there is no such restriction. Wi-Fi के लिए it is not there, so Wi-Fi can be provided. Now this is the thing. Wi-Fi services can be provided when electronic devices are permitted to be used on the aircraft even below this height. So that's why the news 3000 से meter भी if it is allowed, so Wi-Fi can be provided but not internet, mobile internet services. This is the catch. Now next state news, no state news, international news भी नहीं, MOUs and mergers की बात करते हैं. So Viacom 18 Media has become direct subsidiary of Reliance Industries. Okay. Now, Viacom 18 Media has been acquired by Reliance subsidiary. This is something you can remember. This much only is relevant here. Remember, Viacom 18 Media is now a direct subsidiary of Reliance. So, next is Fair Trade Regulator CCI, the Competition Commission of India. Competition Commission of India has cleared World Bank's IFSCA, Asian Development Bank and German government's DEG proposal to acquire a stake in Fourth Partner Energy. All these entities, they want to acquire a stake in Fourth Partner Energy. For this, they have received approval from the Competition Commission of India. Remember this, okay? And why they want to acquire stake in Fourth Partner Energy? Say this Fourth Partner Energy is working towards renewable energy. So it will expand their renewable energy capabilities. Okay. Then next is M Junction Services Limited, which is joint venture between Tata Steel and SAIL, is planning to expand transactions into European market. So you just remember this much, that M Junction is a joint venture between whom? M Junction is a joint venture between Tata Steel and SAIL. This much only will be relevant. They are trying to expand themselves in the European market. The next is All India Institute of Medical Sciences Delhi. So AIIMS Delhi is set to provide training to Indian Coast Guard for your CPR होता है, CPR is given when someone is you know having symptoms of heart attack, right? So any pain, sudden and sharp pain in your chest area, so CPR is provided, right? So for CPR, any emergency cases, the Indian Coast Guard personnel should be trained to provide CPR to the personnel. For this aims, Delhi will be providing them training. This much only is there in MOUs, acquisitions and merger section. Moving on to Science Tech. Science Tech में we have ISRO. ISRO will be achieving a significant milestone with the geosynchronous launch vehicle mission scheduled in January 2025 to become 100th launch from Sriharikota spacecraft, Andhra Pradesh, or Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota. ISRO is going to achieve this milestone. What is the milestone? 100th launch hoga from Sriharikota. Okay. ISRO ka it will be 100th launch, and GSLV will be carrying it, the geosynchronous launch vehicle, GSLV, है ना? You have these launch vehicles of ISRO, PSLV, GSLV. PSLV is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, जो जनरली आपकी लोअर अर्थ ऑर्बिट की सैटेलाइट्स लेकर जाता है, रिमोट सेंसिंग सैटेलाइट्स एटसेट्रा. GSLV हायर ऑर्बिट्स की सैटेलाइट लेकर जाता है, ज़्यादा पेलोड ले जा सकता है, राइट? GSLV का इंजन मोर एडवांस्ड है देन योर PSLV. तो GSLV हैव क्रायोजेनिक टेक्नोलॉजी एज वेल, क्रायोजेनिक. It is 3 stage, PSLV is I think 4 stage if I am correct. So these are important differences. Basically communication satellites जो है आपकी वो GSLV लेकर जाता है, remote sensing PSLV लेकर जाता है. Remember these differences. So this is going to be 100th launch, and this is the thing. Since it is going to be 100th launch, so what was the 99th mission? This is also important, right? 99th mission जो था इसरो का वो है launch of PSLV C60. PSLV C60 was your 99th mission of ISRO, जिसमें 2 हम important satellites लेके गए थे, Space Deck and POEM4, right? Space Decks and POEM4. These 2 missions I have already discussed with you in previous CA classes. So please revise them. POEM4 and Space Decks we have discussed lot number of times in much detail, right? And one very important fact about PSLV, PSLV is also known by a very famous known. It is known as India's workhorse launch vehicle. PSLV, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, is known as India's workhorse launch vehicle. वर्कहॉर्स क्यों बोलते हैं इसको? क्योंकि इसने सबसे ज्यादा सैटेलाइट्स लेकर गया है इसरो के लिए, राइट? Maximum number of satellites PSLV has taken for ISRO into the space. So this is the thing. Remember, now next news is your Manastu Space. Manastu Space, which is a space tech startup started by IIT Bombay. It has successfully test fired green propulsion system Vyom 2U onboard PSLV C60. तो अभी हमने देखा PSLV C60 is the 99th mission. IIT Bombay has successfully tested the green propulsion system. It is going to make the engine more effective and more clean energy oriented, right? For PSLV C60 in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. This green propulsion system, as I told you, is non-toxic, environment friendly. तो इससे pollution नहीं होगा, है ना? Environment friendly alternative to conventional chemical propulsion. Propulsion होता है जिससे आपको upthrust मिलता है spacecraft को ले जाने के लिए space में, right? So this would be more greener kind of engine technique and propulsion technique. Remember this, IIT Bombay ने इसको test किया है in Lucknow. Then next, defense में we don't have anything. Talking about reports. So reports में you have MHA. MHA's annual report for the year 23-24 is out, which says that the state governments have roped in 54,800 persons as volunteers against cyber crime. Okay, cyber crime के लिए MHA is working constantly. 54,800 persons the state governments have volunteered. Next, the I4C, which is Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, which coordinates these cybercrime activities and ensure timely redressal and information and all. So I4C under MHA, which was launched by Ministry of Home Affairs only, they aim to bring together citizens with passion to serve the nation on a single platform to contribute in this fight against cybercrime. यहाँ पे आपको कुछ ज़्यादा याद नहीं रखना है, आपको सिर्फ इतना ध्यान रखना है I4C क्या है। I4C वी हैव डिस्कस नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स। I4C इज इंडियन साइबर क्राइम कोऑर्डिनेशन सेंटर, जो साइबर क्राइम से फाइट करने में हेल्प कर रहा है। मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम अफेयर्स हैज एस्टैब्लिश्ड दिस particularly for coordinating cybercrime related cases. This much only is relevant here. Then talking about awards, so you have 28th Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances has issued some guidelines for 28th National Awards for E-Governance 2025 which will be provided. Okay, National E-Governance Prize. So what they have issued is, what you have to remember is that there will be 6 categories. This much only is relevant here, remember. There will be total 6 categories. How many? 6 categories will be there in which these e-governance prizes would be announced. First, government process re-engineering by use of technology for digital transformation. How much you have been able to integrate technology in your governance. First category. Second category, how much you have been able to capitalize upon the innovative tools like AI, etc. Okay. Third, best practices or innovation you have introduced as a ministry, as a department, whatever, right? So this is the third category. Then fourth category, grassroots level initiatives. What you have brought in for the gram panchayat, for the municipal corporation, the grassroots levels, how much you have transformed them. Then the fifth category, replication of scaling up successful national award projects like NEG, Prime Minister Awards in Excellence. Okay, so they will be replicating these eligible participants for other awards, what they have created, like these awards, Prime Minister Awards in Excellence, awards conferred by the ministries. So they will be incorporating some of them as well in this category. Then digital transformation by the use of data analytics in digital platforms. How much you have been able to transform your digital data analytics with the use of digital tools. Okay, these are the 6 categories. Remember, prize money would be 10 lakh rupees for gold awardees and 5 lakh rupees for silver awardees. 10 लाख गोल्ड के लिए और 6 लाख सिल्वर के लिए, 5 लाख सॉरी, 5 lakhs would be for silver awardees. This was the thing. Then next appointments, let's see. So you have Bhuvnesh Kumar appointed as CEO of your UIDAI. UIDAI is Unique Identification Authority of India. UIDAI is the implementing and nodal agency for Aadhaar. Okay. Then Rikant Pite, CEO of Ease My Trip. Then Suresh Vasant Patil, CEO of Indian Cement. Manish Singhal, Secretary General of ASSOCHAM, Associate Chambers of Industry and Commerce. Then obituaries mein we have Dr. K.S. Manilal, esteemed, very famous botanist. Very famous botanist. So this name is there in the obituaries. And then important days mein we have Lokpal Day. Remember, Lokpal Day observed on 16th January 2025. It is going to be observed 16 जनवरी. लोकपाल का क्या कंसेप्ट था? लोकपाल का कंसेप्ट ये है, लोकपाल के थ्रू दे वांट टू रिड्यूस द बर्डन डिपेंडेंसी ऑन द इंडियन कोर्ट्स एंड रिड्यूस द पेंडेंसी ऑफ केसेस. लोकपाल ऑल्सो इंश्योर्स कि आप अल्टरनेट रिड्रेसल मैकेनिज्म को अडॉप्ट करें, जैसे ADR, अल्टरनेट डिस्प्यूट रिड्रेसल, मीडिएशन, नेगोशिएशन, कि कोई भी डिस्प्यूट है इफ इट कैन बी सॉल्व अपार्ट फ्रॉम दी हीनियस क्राइम केसेस, सिविल केसेस जैसे होते हैं, कोई लैंड पे डिस्प्यूट है, कोई मैरिज डिस्प्यूट है, राइट, कि वो कोर्ट से बाहर ही सॉल्व हो जाए विद द हेल्प ऑफ आर्बिट्रेशन, मीडिएशन, negotiation. So this is the main idea. Lokpal Day is observed on 16 January. Then you have IMD completing 150 years of service. India Meteorological Department. So 15th January it was established. On 15th January it will complete 150 years. Then you have Global Family Day. 1st January it is observed. Then person in news, the last thing for today. Ayush Mhatre from Mumbai has set a new world record. Remember, Ayush Mhatre from Mumbai, youngest player to score 150 in the list A cricket during Vijay Hazare Trophy. विजय हजारे ट्रॉफी तो आपकी क्रिकेट के सिलेक्शन के जो राउंड्स होते हैं अलग अलग, जिसमें आपको ग्रुप्स को डिफीट करना होता है, उससे एसोसिएटेड है, राइट. विजय हजारे ट्रॉफी में मुंबई आयुष मात्रे हैज क्रिएटेड हिस्ट्री बाय बिकमिंग द यंगेस्ट प्लेयर टू स्कोर 150 in the list A cricket. I hope all these news are clear. This is the financial guide. You always can go through it for boosting your finance concepts. I know the class was lengthy for today. A very important class it was. Please revise it. So now it's time for the top 5 MCQs from today's discussion. Tell me the answers quickly. The short series. Question number 1. Key urban cooperative banks, stakeholders like, Ministry of Cooperation, etc. They are trying to meet the capital requirement as set by the RBI within the deadline, which is 7th Feb 2025. Okay, for creation of an umbrella organization which will be working for betterment and development of urban cooperative banks. Tell me, what is the capital requirement for this organization? Tell me, what is the capital requirement for this? Very good, Anjali. 300 crores, right? हमने देखा था इसको अभी recently. 300 crores is the correct option. So C is the right answer here. 300 crores. Next question. The RBI has implemented new rules for fixed deposit with the NBFCs and housing finance companies. Okay. Accordingly, read the following statements and tell me which one is the incorrect one. Not 200 crores, Sai. It is 300 crores. Okay. Tell me which of the following statements is incorrect regarding the new guidelines for fixed deposit. बहुत डिटेल में हमने डिस्कस किया है. Tell me which statement is incorrect one. Anyone? Okay, very good. Anjali, so you're saying A. Why A is incorrect? Because you see, deposit exceeding 10,000 may you can withdraw within 3 months. Okay. Partial withdrawal is allowed, for which you can either withdraw 50% of the principal amount or up to rupees 5 lakh. So this is not 2, this is 5 lakh. Okay. Whichever is lower. This is not 2 lakhs, this is 5 lakh. Hence, first statement is incorrect. So this would be your answer. Right? All other statements are correct. Yes, it will be 5 lakh. Very good. Now, next question. Who among the following has set a new world record of creating 150 score, having 150 score in list A of Vijay Hazare Trophy? Who among the following? Tell me. So, here the correct option would be recently we have discussed this, Ayush Matre from Mumbai, right? Ayush Matre from Mumbai has created this record. Next question. SEBI has introduced MF Lite framework only for passive mutual funds, right? And the framework applies to passive funds based on domestic equity indices with a minimum asset under management of how much? So what is this minimum AUM requirement under MF Lite framework which SEBI has introduced? Tell me, minimum AUM requirement. Domestic की हम बात कर रहे हैं, not the overseas one. Domestic की. What is the minimum AUM requirement? The minimum AUM requirement would be, quickly tell me. Very good. 5,000 crore rupees, 5,000 crores or more. Last question in the short series. Reserve Bank of India has implemented revised norms for deposit taking housing finance companies. It requires that now they should be maintaining higher levels of liquidity as a percentage of their total outstanding deposit. How much is the percentage required now from the previous level? What percentage should they be holding in liquid assets? How much percentage should they be holding in liquid assets? Quickly tell me. 14%, very good. 14%. So E is the right option, 14%. Earlier it was 13%, and by July 2025 it would be 15%. And out of this 14%, 8% should be in unencumbered government securities or eligible securities, right? So you should remember these things. That is it for 2nd January CA and short series. I know a lot of things were discussed today. It was a heavy class, but I hope I have been able to explain you in the best possible manner. Please revise this class extensively. You definitely are going to have some questions at least from today's class, right? This is for sure. So please revise it religiously and revise the concepts we have discussed along with the facts. I hope the class was useful for you. I'll see you all in the next session. Till then, have a great day. Thank you so much.